In this video, I'm going to show you how to install the brake caliper on your Nissan Quest located behind your front wheels. Using a 21mm socket, loosen and remove your lug nuts. Remove your wheel and set it aside. We have our brake caliper here with the bracket. What we want to do is remove our slider pins. We're going to use our 17mm socket to loosen and remove these. Now we pull this out, you can see that one of these pins has a rubber sleeve and the other one doesn't. It's important that we replace this in the same position as when it came out. What we're going to do is we're going to mark the side with our yellow crayon so we know that that's the one that has the sleeve on it. I'm going to pop open our boots here. Make sure we get a little bit of extra grease inside these ports. We don't want a ton, but we do want to make sure that the slide pins are well lubricated. Reinstall the boots. Now there's limited amount of grease on our pins here. We do want to give this a fresh, thin coat. Do the same for the other side. So now that we have both slider pins greased, we'll set those aside. Grab your caliper bracket here. You want to apply a thin coat of grease right where the slider components are supposed to go. Just kind of smear that. You want a thin coat. You don't want globs of grease on it. Take your slider, line that up, and press that on. And flip it over and repeat for the other side. All right, now that we have that assembled there, just gonna get our slide pins. We'll just start them a few threads in here for now. And then we'll set this aside. On the back side of our caliper here, we have our fluid flex hose right here. It goes into the back side. Now there's a 12mm banjo bolt on the back. We're going to loosen and remove this. Now when we do, brake fluid is going to come out, so be sure you have a catch can or a bucket underneath to catch this fluid. When we pull this off, there should be two copper washers, one here and normally one on the other side. It might be stuck on the bolt itself, but ours are on there. So let's go ahead and pop these off. We will not be reusing these. Take the new banjo bolt, make sure there is a new copper washer on one side, slide it through, put on another copper washer on the other side. Take your new caliper. We're going to line this up and start this a few threads. Once you have that started, you're going to use an 11mm socket. Snug that down. Wipe down any of the residual fluid. Before we go any further, you do want to go ahead and support and hang this caliper. We don't want this to drop and pull on this hose. It can damage a hose, tear it, and cause braking issues down the road if it's not evident at first. Hang that up and out of the way. Use a 17mm socket to loosen and remove our slider pins. slide this off. Now when removing this here, go ahead and drop that down inside your retainer or your bucket. Now you're probably going to have spring clips here. Here's one here. There's normally one on the bottom. It actually popped off inside of our caliper. But you want to make sure you keep these here. You can either reuse your pads or install a new set of pads at this time. Using a 22mm socket, loosen and remove the 2 caliper bracket bolts. Be careful, that caliper bracket can fall once you remove these bolts, so make sure you're holding it while you're removing the bolt. Let's slide that off. Now we're going to install our new caliper bracket. We did mark this here with the yellow, and that means that our slider pin with the rubber sleeve is going to be on the top. Slide this around your rotor, get that upper bolt started. Get that lower bolt started here. Torque the caliper bracket to knuckle to 90 foot-pounds. Now we're going to install our brake pads. When installing the pads, make sure that the inboard pad has the squeak tab on it. Do the same for the outside. Outside one does not have the squeak tab. Now once these are in, the next step is to install your springs. These are placed inside holes on the outer edge of the pads. And when you install them, they're naturally going to want to push the pads out. So you do have to hold these together. Do the same for the bottom. And just pop the bolts right out here. Go ahead and take this unit and we're going to slide it over the pads. Be careful not to jam up the boots for the slider pins. So you're going to slide this over. Pin with the rubber sleeve goes on the top. Get that started a few threads. Go ahead and install the lower. Let's go ahead and snug those down. Let's torque those down to 54 foot-pounds. Torque down our flex hose banjo bolt to 21 foot-pounds. On your bleeder screw right here, you may have a rubber cap on the end. If you have that, pop that off. We're going to use an 8mm wrench, and we're going to open up this bleeder screw. And And what we're doing now is we're waiting for the fluid to come through the hose, fill up the backside or inside the caliper, and to purge any air out of the unit. Now you can see here, we have a solid stream of fluid coming out. We're also going to be checking for any air bubbles that might be coming out. Now at this point here, it looks pretty good. We're going to go ahead and close this up. Snug that down. Now what you want to do is hop into the vehicle, pump up the brakes. You want to make sure that the brake pedal feels nice and solid. For any reason, if that pedal does not feel solid, you want to go ahead and proceed to the complete vehicle brake bleeding process. Then you can install your wheel and you're all set. Take your wheel and install it. I want to go ahead and start these lug nuts by hand. Get them started a few threads. This will help prevent cross threading. Once we have them all started, we're going to go ahead and snug them down. When tightening down the lug nuts, you want to do it in a crisscross pattern. Go ahead and torque your wheels down to 80 foot-pounds. And do this in a crisscross pattern. I'm going to start by spraying down our reservoir here, cleaning up any debris. Wipe that down. Go ahead and open up that cap, rotating that counterclockwise and pulling that out. So now that we have our cap off, there is a screen right here. I'm going to use a small pick, and I'm not grabbing the screen, but I'm on the edge of the lip of it. Now, wearing safety glasses when performing a job like this, you don't want to get brake fluid in your eyes. You pull this out, set that aside. Now our goal is to try and pull some fluid out of this here and then top it off with some fresh fluid. We're going to use our extractor tool and pull out as much fluid as we can. Now we're not going to be able to pull all the fluid out, but our goal is to pull out some of that fluid, and then we're going to top it off with some fresh fluid. As we perform our brake bleeding process, we want to make sure that we're introducing fresh, clean fluid into our brake lines and through the entire system. At this point here, we can drop our screen back in, press that down, use the recommended DOT3 brake fluid, and we're going to fill this right up to the top of the neck itself. And once that's filled up, reinstall the cap. So here we are at our right rear wheel. Now the brake bleeding process is going to be the right rear, followed by the left front, followed by the left rear, and we're going to end with the right front wheel. Now we have somebody inside the vehicle. What they're going to do is they're going to pump up the brakes and they're going to hold the pedal, and then we're going to open up the bleeder screw right here on our brake caliper. This is going to release any air bubbles, and what we're looking for is a solid stream of fluid coming out. Then we're going to seal this up, and they're going to repeat this process for a couple times so we make sure we have all of the air out of the line. Now on this particular model here, we have a rubber cap. We're going to pop that off. If yours does not have that, it's not critical. So let's go ahead and get this started. We have a reservoir here, comes around. We're going to put this on. Now this is an 8mm bleeder screw. And we're going to go ahead and have the person inside the vehicle pump up the brakes. All right, while they're holding that, we're going to watch our line here and watch for that fluid. And we can see we have plenty of air bubbles coming out of that. So we're going to seal that up. Okay, pump it up. And we'll go one more time. And you can see we have a solid stream of fluid. We're going to do one more time, and then we're going to move up to that left front wheel. Okay, we're going to seal that up. We're going to pull off the line here, let this drain into our reservoir, and pop on our cap. Let's go ahead and move to the left front wheel. So here we are at the left front wheel. We have a similar setup, caliper with the bleeder screw. Go ahead and remove that rubber cap. I'm just set that aside for now. I'm gonna put our hose on. All right, we're gonna have him pump up the brakes. While he's holding that, we're gonna open this up. Snug that down. Okay, repeat. And one more time. Now on our left front wheel, we're getting a solid stream of fluid here. I'm going to seal this up. We're going to release this here, let that fluid drain into our reservoir, and put on our cap. Before we move on to the next wheel, we're now going to go underneath the hood and top off our brake fluid. So after we've bled out 2 of those wheels there, you want to come back here. And you want to go ahead and add fluid to get it up to that full line. Actually going to go up a little bit higher because we're going to bleed off the next 2 wheels. Now that we've topped off our reservoir after bleeding off the 2 wheels, you want to repeat this process for the left rear and then finish up with the right front. Open up the cap, top it off to the max line. Now that we've topped off to the max line, put on the cap, seal it. Now that we've cleaned everything up, hop into the vehicle, pump up the brakes, make sure that the pedal is nice and firm. So for any reason, if it's not firm, you want to go ahead and repeat the brake bleeding process one more time. Once you're completed with that, go ahead, install your wheels, torque the lug nuts to 80 foot-pounds. You can go ahead and go for road test.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.